We did have the question raised on the break of the firewall and Judicial Council's rulings that really have heightened the tension between board and cabinets, bishops and cabinets, and it is there. One suggestion is let's do away with Judicial Council, but that's out of our control too. But the other way to handle this is to have a frank discussion, and it seems to me that the Judicial Council rulings on the firewall are all surrounding fair practice. And if the fair practice initiatives are in place during any kind of CRC exiting or any kind of evaluation of the ordination of a person, then the firewall should be in place. But everything else, I don't see a ruling by Judicial Council or in the discipline on the interaction between boards and bishops and cabinets. Now, it deserves a further discussion. The suggestion from the staff, and that's why we have a great staff, is that we confine that discussion to our affinity group when the board chairs and the bishops and cabinets are together this afternoon. That'll be a concentrated time for you to have exact discussions about that. And it really is confined to those leaders, by the way, in terms of the issue. So that's one suggestion. I would have liked to have opened this up, but the staff said, no, let's go with our agenda. And so that's one area. The other area is Thursday afternoon, annual conferences will again have chances to gather. So this is other venues that they have planned for us to deal with this, okay? So let's tackle this final area, which is clergy effectiveness and the whole area. And I thought I'd share some leadership traits of clergy that I found in my research. And this is, my dissertation was on high effective clergy. And I apologize, I had to take out all of the heavy academic statistics that we were involved in this particular one. It was boring me. If it bored the presenter, you'd be falling asleep. So I'd fall asleep during the presentation if it was full too. But if you're interested, I could send you a copy of the dissertation if you need it, if you want all the hard facts. But here's my observation. Some United Methodist clergy seem to be able to grow a local church no matter what the conditions of the church, the demographics, or the previous leadership of the church. And the question is why? That I've just noticed throughout my career that there are some of you who have this gift, so to speak. Wherever we place you, you can bring vitality. And that was my problem. My question was, what was it? What were the traits, the qualities, or characteristics, if any, of these high effective and successful United Methodist Church ministers that enable them to grow and vitalize wherever they're sent? So we did both a quantitative and a qualitative study on this, and the quantitative results were very clear. Basically had two focus groups, high effective clergy and low effective clergy, and we just gave them assessments. And on the assessment of the emotional intelligence, the BOM is what I used, there was a significant correlation at the 05 level, it was even higher than that, by the way, in total EQ, or emotional intelligence score, between high effective and low effective clergy. So it's without a doubt, I think we've proven that emotional intelligence is one of the keys in successful ministry. The other ones that we had were the BOM has 20 scales, and these clergy high effective were significant on 15 of the 20, and their overall score was that. There was also a correlation between the church size and vitality of their present appointment, between high and low. Duh, that's kind of a no-brainer. But the other one was there a correlation in the self-ranking of our clergy, high and low effective. In other words, the high effective ones did believe that they were more effective, and the low ones had lower self-esteem when it came to their self-assessment of who they were. But basically, there were 12 key results. I did also a quantitative study of in-depth interviews with high effective clergy, and it was clear that in emotional intelligence, they were clearly light years ahead of the low effective group. And really, emotional intelligence is divided up into a great many ways to do this. We're going to rush through this. You can access this through any of the major works on emotional intelligence, but this particular matrix has personal competence, both what I see, my internal self, and what I do, my external actions. So emotional intelligence is really good at monitoring who I am and what my internal leadership capacities are, and then how I display that or how I show up, basically, in performance. And then the second one is social competence, which is also an awareness of how others, how I relate and see other people in EQ, as well as how I manage those relationships. And again, we're going to speed through this because it's all there, and you could go back to this. I'll make this PowerPoint available also. But I'm always struck by the tremendous sort of comprehensiveness of emotional intelligence. In self-awareness, just one of the quadrants, it is emotional self-awareness, accurate self, it's all of these things. But when the Harvard Business Advisory Board was polled on what was the #1 ranked quality of high effective leaders in a secular world, they ranked self-awareness as the #1 trait that they're looking for, or what has they've seen as a successful quality, self-awareness. Again, to speed through these are the ones with self-management, and I'm always struck by the emotional self-control. Many of our clergy who really have trouble where they are have the lack of filters, and these lack of, yeah, I know you know, the lack of these emotional filters really do them in because they really just don't know how to manage them. And it's constantly getting them into trouble in some ways. But you have other things like adaptability and achievement, optimism. These are things that you normally wouldn't relate to emotional intelligence, but it's all there. The third one, social awareness, empathy, organizational awareness. You know not only about how individuals act, you know how systems operate in emotional intelligence. And empathy is an interesting one because on the Baron test, the high and low effective clergy did not have a significant difference on this particular dimension. Interesting enough. So the low effective clergy, they were clearly lower, but not at the 05 level. They were able to learn. And I think this comes back to our seminary training, where we have emphasized pastoral care and counseling and CPE. You can get better on any of these. You can work on any of these traits in order to improve. And what we have to improve our clergy on is all of them, like emotional self-awareness and getting better filters. I think if we work with them, we can improve them in emotional intelligence overall. And this was sort of the takeaway from the dissertation research. And the last one is relationship management, and these are, I love these because there's so much qualities of what we're seeing in secular leadership also. Inspirational leadership, influence, change, catalyst, conflict management, which comes with change automatically. But inspirational leadership is what I'm hawking now as the quick sort of reality that we all have to deal with. Some of you might have caught President Obama's, after he was reelected, he was asked in an interview, what would he do differently in his first term? And Obama's response is, more inspiration and less perspiration. He really said he had failed to inspire. And I think that that was a good self-awareness because I think that that's what's plagued him. And I think that it's an example for us that inspirational change is the greatest lever that we have as influencers. So I had an entrepreneur professor who said the language of leadership is this, that the language of managers is data and information. And some of your DSs know that this is a reality that you have to deal with. The language of coaches is questions, and especially provocative questions. And the language of leaders is inspiration, especially narrative inspiration. So the telling of inspirational stories to motivate and to spur people. That's a gift that I think we need to impart upon our clergy Part of their task or their central key in leadership is to inspire others to greater heights. You're all familiar probably with the Johari window, and we don't have time to go into this directly, but what I really think is important in the Johari window is the third quadrant in the top left-hand corner, the blind self, where we don't know about this quality in us, but others know it and see it. And it's really a blind spot because we're not aware of that. Now, let me give you the example. I had a clergy person who was very gifted towards the nearest end of his career, but he came from military chaplaincy, of which he was high command in military, and he had a hard time making the switch to the local level, even though he's very gifted. And he was convinced he was a collaborative, distributive leader. I mean, he was absolutely convinced he did that. His church, his superintendent, his evaluations are, this is a command and control leader that really is directive. And when we showed him the result, he just couldn't believe it. And the harder thing was he didn't accept it, okay? It was the blind self, even when the evidence was all there, that did him in. Because he was convinced, he had read the literature, he convinced he was a collaborative leader, but clearly he wasn't showing up that way. And I think that blind self is really the one that we've really got to pay serious attention to with some of our clergy. Now, I'm going to speed through this because I found 12 sort of keys, of which emotional intelligence is one on a quantitative one. Also, high effective clergy excel in transformational leadership, and I don't have time to really delve into the fullness of that, maybe another time, but it is demonstrated in their commitment to empower laity. All of the high effective leaders that I interviewed, their main objective was to empower laity and get out of the way. So the paradigm that we lifted in the research was they see the gift in others, they name and cultivate those gifts, and they unleash these gifts and people into ministry and community. That was the paradigm that was sort of we gleaned out of their work. And this is what we've got to get back. I am convinced that the one thing we must jettison in our United Methodist Church is the individualistic solo practitioner in ministry. We send you out and you sink and swim on your own, even though we're trying to put support systems in place. That's not the Jesus way. The Jesus way is communal. It is to send people in resourcing together out. And we've got to find our way for the solo practitioner that becomes the hero status, by the way. In other words, we're reinforcing competition and directiveness, and we've got to find a way to collaborate in our ministry and not send the young clergy that we have coming in to sink or swim on their own, especially in these difficult rural or turnaround assignments. I think assigning them a coach, as I recommend in the book, a coach, a spiritual director, a counselor, it would be worth the money for the church to undergird their ministry, especially in the beginning, with all the resources we can to get them so they're not alone in solo practicing. All right, so again, I can go on, and I'm on a soapbox, and I apologize for that, but I really think we've got the paradigm wrong. Perfect example of this is when I was a district superintendent in Los Angeles, the high effective clergy with a large church was going to do a fundraiser for Katrina right after the hurricanes hit. And they thought they'd throw a concert because they're very musical in the church. And they thought, if we could raise $5,000, it'd be great. Well, she put the idea out. And there was a guy in the church who had only come for about a year, just came to worship, said he was very busy on the road a lot, couldn't get involved. And he said, maybe I could help you with this concert. Well, it turned out he was a music promoter in the industry. He got Katie Lang, Jackson Brown, all gratis, all these big headliners to come to the church. He set up all the roadies, all the tech stuff by volunteers. He then went out and he got money from the radio stations and others to pay for all the tickets. The church did not have to pay for a cent. He set everything up. They had the concert on Sunday, of which I got a front row seat. Sometimes being a DS really helps. We had worship in the morning, by the way, and it was just, normal worship. It was not packed. That afternoon, the concert took place. They lined up about 3 hours ahead of the concert. The line went around this massive church for blocks. They've never seen this many people. They filled every spot in that church, and they raised something like, at the end of the day, almost $100,000 from this one event. All from one layperson that was anonymous to that time and just came by accident and said, I think I could help you out here. Empowerment of our laity is the key. All right, next one is all of them possessed a deep well of faith. And this well affected all of the key issues around leadership: vision, humility, resilience, passion. The faith is what fueled these leaders. And this is a one-up we have from the secular community, because they don't often access this huge dimension for us, which is our fuel and our passion and our directives in life come from God. And we could just share this straight out. And when I'm in secular venues, by the way, which often you find yourself in those and you get a chance to speak, the secular folks, because I'm a minister, it's okay for me to talk about faith. And they really want to talk about that faith. But they're not allowed in their organization, perhaps, to do that. But time and time again, I'm called upon for the faith component in secular gatherings of leaders or CEOs or whoever you have that you're dealing with. This interest is just remarkable to me. The other interest that I'm finding in secular venues is the sense of community. Is so, there's a thirst for community, even in their organizations. We have the advantage of being able to talk about this and to access these deep wells directly as part of who we are and our relationship to God. So we need to use this. Along with this is a tremendous sense of passion. There's an engagement and focus in their work, and it's because of this deep well of faith, by the way. I saw a deep sense of humility about these leaders. And it's interesting because some of the leaders said that they were deeply humble and stuff, but they didn't act that way. So once again, it was this blind spot of speaking the words and saying it on paper, but for the dissertation purposes, I didn't remark that in my findings. But it is to be consistent. If you speak about humbleness, then you got to act humble. Again, how you show up.